All right, y'all. So we're going to roll this back one more again. And Ryan and I are going to talk about kind of our programming strategies after going through Zach's course. And the first thing we want to go through is a couple of videos, one of me front squatting and then another one of Ryan front squatting, just so you guys can kind of visually see what we're talking about. And so I'm going to share my screen real quick, and then I will – so this is a video with obviously better music, bigger quads.
Yeah, we'll see. You didn't even show my video yet, so you can't. I mean, that's not. I mean, compared to the last video that you showed in this podcast, I would definitely agree that the quads are bigger. Anyway.
So I don't think many people would argue in the S&C world that it's a decent front squat. Like, no one's going to see this front squat and be like, oh, we need to completely rework that. But that's essentially what we're saying here. I'm at no time counter-nutated at all. Like, if you look at the top of this movement, I'm still not counter-nutated right there. I'm nutated. So that means that I got to completely tilt my pelvis another way and then be able to maintain that. Whereas, which is like, for instance, that's a load that I could probably do for 15 reps if you let me bounce out of the hole and do what I've been doing for a really long time. And then here's Ryan. You can see it right there. You can see in the pelvis. His pelvis is in a completely different position. And then you can't extend in this position because you lack hip extension, correct?
Yeah. So this is actually, this is the one set I tried doing without the extra heel elevation. You can see the plates in front of me. I was doing these with even more of a heel elevation, which I ended up going back to because it's just freaking impossible. Like I'm definitely more counter-nutated in this position to compared to yours, but I'm still not really where I think Zach would want me to be for this. And I don't want to speak for him, but there's definitely more. Like, that's about as much range as I have, and only reason I'm able to even get there is because I'm bending my knees. Like you said, I can't fully extend my hips, especially if I'm going to try to stay in some semblance of counter-nutation. So, yeah, it's just a very different position, and this is freaking work just to hold that there.
And this is light relatively for you. This is like 235.
Yeah.
And I think this is the big conundrum that, I mean, that looks solid. Like, look how far your knees are forward. Like, we would, I mean, maybe not perfect, but definitely a lot different. But then we get into, I think, where we're both kind of struggle bus is where does all this fit in? Where is this a main lift? Because this, as far as loading, like, we're both so far off our loading schematic. And so maybe we're overloading the quads because of this new position, but where does this really fit in? Where do we treat this? And it was really cool when we showed our programs to each other. That sounded terrible. Well, whatever. It is. So we went over. We both just went our separate ways and created our own little program schematics. And granted, we've worked together for a while, so we would expect them to be somewhat similar, but they're nearly identical. And so I'm going to share my screen, and then we can jump through mine. And then we'll kind of show yours. And so what I did here is I'm thinking of tenets that when we program, what is the number one thing that I'm looking for first? It's volume across muscle groups, sets per week per muscle group. And I think what a lot of people, and we've talked about this a lot, what a lot of people do when they find a new shiny thing is everything changes. And that's what I would stay away from with this type of material. Is we have some fundamental principles. We have some really, really good things that we know that are work. Let's not throw those to the dogs. Let's just make sure that we have the meat and potatoes, and then we can kind of sprinkle this other stuff on. And then maybe even over time, maybe this can become more of our meat and potatoes. And so if you're not an advanced trainee, I wouldn't recommend probably doing either of these programs just because they're so high in volume for the week. Like, mine is essentially training upper and lower 3 days a week. And then the bulk of my volume is coming from accessory movements, there's only really 4 sets of incline and bench on this. And then you have then I got the repositioning drills in the first part, and then a cool down, essentially repositioning drills. And then everything in green are exercises that Ryan and I pretty much treat as repositioning drills in of themselves by how we think about coaching them. And so the volume on this is high, but there's not a lot of compound barbell work. You got some front squats here, but otherwise split squats here, but otherwise it's pretty much all.
Doing a lot of your compound work you're also doing with the pause right now. So it's loads are going to be a little bit lighter.
Yeah, so the bench is all pause. The front squats are with the pause. So that's all. The thought process there is I'm taking out that elastic component and trying to use more muscles. I'm interested to see what this does, because I just don't know. My big conundrum is, like, I don't know if we count this. Like, I don't know if this gets to count for sets on the quads. That's my big conundrum. I'm not counting this alternating floor DB press. I'm not counting that as a tricep or a chest movement. I'm just counting it as a warm up. And so that's my big conundrum. But I also don't necessarily know that it matters, because I built so many backups in here, because the leg extensions, I have 12 sets of quad volume just on leg extensions. And then the leg press that we have down here is pretty quad dominant. So there I'm picking up another 6 sets. So I'm already at 18 sets on quads without counting that. So I think the big thing that I always think about is, hey, if this doesn't work, can I have backups on backups? And that's partly because I live in Costa Rica and everything, like, you have to have that. So it's somehow made its way into my programming. And then
you did break your leg press too, so you kind of need to have some backups for.
It's not broken.
For the backups.
We got to fix it. We got to fly in. I'm gonna have to fly back to get this little red wheel. Poor Vida. And so the cool downs I have here are this decline quadruped on elbows, or if you can't get that one, a rock back. And my main goal in these cool downs is I'm making the assumption that people are anterior and posteriorly compressed, and I'm trying to get some air in that posterior mediastinum.
So essentially, we're saying is, like, the upper thorax is just like to squish. Like, the easiest way, I love, like, Zach's toothpaste analogy, where, like, essentially if you just took a tube of toothpaste and just squeezed down, everything would just move down to the bottom. And that's kind of what happens at the rib cage, is, like, people just get so compressed up top that all the air just has to push down. And you'll see that in the way that people breathe, and see that in the way that they move. And I think most weightlifters tend to fall into that category, if not just most people in general.
Yeah. And I think if you train, that's where you're going to be. So I just thought of that avatar when I was building this out. And the other thing I realized in the past, like, 24 hours of just thinking about this is none of this program doesn't necessarily look complicated at all. Like, it's pretty cookie cutter, but the devil is in the details, and that all of these things in green are probably – so I'm going to give people this program, but if you don't know, like, the principles in which we're kind of why we're going to exhale and reach on a chest fly, then I don't know that this program is going to be that different or that helpful for you. So that's the big thing for me, is if you don't understand these principles, then you're not going to get the most out of this program, because there's just some things, there's some basic tenets, like that position where you have your head stacked over essentially your anus pretty much. So your head is stacked over your thorax, which is stacked over your pelvic diaphragm. And so if you're not maintaining that in a lat pull down or, a tricep extension, you're probably out of position. And so those are kind of the big things that we're looking at. And
in order for you to get there, it's probably going to be very challenging.
Yeah. And what we've saw is, like, people can't maintain that position. So everything pretty much turns into an ab exercise until they can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is really weird. Like, so we'll put strong people in that lat pull down position, and we'll legit put 60 pounds on a cable, and they have no shot at maintaining it, and their abs are going crazy.
Yep.
And their lats aren't really the limiter yet. So that's the other thing, is because people have gotten big without ever thinking about any of this stuff. Real big. So I think Ryan and I are both willing to shoot ourselves in the foot possibly for, you know, a good 12 weeks or 16-week block. And I think the worst thing that happens is it's kind of maybe like a deload because we're just doing a bunch of stuff that we're not very good at yet. But once that novelty wears off and your neural system kind of cues into these new patterns, I think it could be really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think so too. I think, you know, like we talked about, one of the nice things about both your schedule and my schedule is we have the time to train, you know, so we can mess around. Like, I mean, I'm doing a lot more compound lifts because I really do want to see just more as an experiment, just to kind of see if I'm able to rewire some of this stuff. So I'm spending a lot of time doing like kind of shitty front squats, you know, like I can't really load them that heavy. I also can't really do what I'm trying to do yet, but I have enough time to play with it, you know, and I think that's like, you just have to know that. So I'm not sure what I would do with all this if I had someone who was pretty stuck, but not in any kind of pain. And I was just presented with this information, and I don't know if I would really give this to them if they didn't have a lot of time, because I don't want to pull away from their training adaptation. But I think that what you would do is kind of exactly what you're doing. You know, you have these easier positions. Like if you're laying down on the ground and you have your, like if you're doing a tricep extension on the ground, like in hook line, that's super easy to maintain that position. I can tell you that probably in the first couple weeks of doing that, you probably won't really feel your triceps that much. The limiting factor is going to be holding that position, but that'll change very quickly. Now, you and I have both experienced that. We've done that with plenty of other people. So I'm hoping that, you know, with just being diligent with this stuff over time, that I'm hoping that the same thing will happen with an exercise like a front squat, or at least to some degree.
Maybe
because we've seen it happen. It's going to take longer.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can guarantee that. But even just from last week to this week, I don't have any videos from the previous week, but they were definitely feeling better in terms of how I was able to counter nutate my sacrum, how I was able to get the knees translating forward more on the front squat. So I'm pretty hopeful that things can change to a degree.
And I'm not even against, like, if I wanted to count these sets, what we might do, which would be absolutely atrocious, is lighten this up and just kind of do metabolic work with these front squats. And I think that's probably the best strategy, even just thinking about it in my head right now, is like, that's really, I don't think we're going to be able to necessarily load this up and have it do anything. So maybe just maintaining that position, and that's going to be hell on wheels, especially with the pre-fatigue of the hack squats. So that hack squat is a reach, and that's the only way that I've been able to maintain that counter nutation, and it's still pretty light. If I go heavier, I can feel myself bail out real easily because it's got the pad on the back, so I can feel when my pelvis fails. And I think that's what you're seeing in the front squat too. Is like you're starting to become aware of, okay, that, like, if I go too heavy or if I descend too quickly, I'm going to my pelvis is going to flip around.
Yeah, I think it's you almost just treat it as, like, you know, it's a completely different thing. I think we talked about, you know, a little bit in the beginning about training beginners. Like when you first start training people, you're not going crazy doing all of these calculations. How many weekly sets are they doing? How many sets at or above 8 RPE are they doing? You're just teaching them how to lift. And that's so, and anything that you do, because it's so novel, is going to produce a result. That result is going to look a lot different for someone who's been doing it for 10 years. Like, I don't think that we're going to start counter-nutating the sacrum by 10 degrees and all of a sudden they're going to have this massive hypertrophy growth. Hypertrophy and growth, and that's good stuff. Yeah. That's what you want. You don't want hypertrophy, you want hypertrophy growth. But I don't think they're going to see it like this huge change, you know, but I think that it's still the same kind of thing. You have to earn the right to count your sets. Like if you've been training for 3 months, you haven't earned the right to be tracking your training volume and focusing all these numbers and doing all this data shit. Like that doesn't apply to you. You still need to learn how to lift. And that's kind of how I see these exercises. Like, I think we're both thinking in a way, like, especially like something like the alternating floor press reach. I think that has the potential to actually be a pretty decent accessory exercise. But right now, it's so damn hard just to maintain that reach and to keep that position that it's not, we can't count that as tricep volume or something right now. But I think it has the potential eventually. And I kind of see the front squat being the same way, or bigger exercises like that. So it's like, let's drill them. Let's keep them like as, let's just consider this a completely separate program from the program. And let's just wire these patterns in. Let's get good at them. And then eventually hope that we can use them. And then if we can't, what the hell? Like then we wasted 12 weeks. Yeah, I think that's, if we spend 2 to 3 months doing this stuff and we can't really change things too much. I don't know, man, whatever. Like, at least I think from like an injury prevention standpoint, I think it's a good thing to be able to move in different ways. Like I think that if I can put a bar on my back, I can do a lot of different things with it. Aside from just doing asinine, stupid shit. Like, I think that I'm going to be better off just in general. And I can even feel like, soreness is not always the biggest indicator of what's happening. But I think in the case of people that have been lifting for a while, it does tell you something. And I can tell you my legs feel a lot different today, just in like the places that I'm sore compared to when I would normally do that workout, which I was doing previously.
Yeah, my quads haven't gotten sore from like a squat in a really long time. Like the first time I felt like my quads getting any type of big loading was like when we moved to more machine-based, like just slaughtering leg presses and hack squats.
Yeah.
And so that
tells you something.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if how most people are doing, we talked about that in the podcast with Zach. I just don't think the quads are a limiter for most people how they're squatting anyways. So if we're going to count them and when we're talking about like counting sets for volume, we mean that in order for you to count a set, you have to go to probably at least an 8 RPE or one or two reps in reserve. And most people, especially if you're new, your neurological system, you're not even going to be able to go close to that point. You can't grind yet. And so that's one of the big things that we're thinking about is if we can't get to a point where we can show a velocity drop off and we can get to these ranges where we know that we're building hypertrophy, so we're quote unquote getting effective reps, we can't count that as a hypertrophy set. That's kind of in this gray area of just movement, which isn't bad. It's just not, if you're new, you don't have to worry about this because anything is you could gain muscle riding a bike. Like it doesn't matter. You could gain muscle like doing the worm, like because everything is a novel stimulus. But once you've been doing this for a really long time, you only get to count sets if the effort is there. And we've both seen that. So if this new shiny thing of this new protocol of keeping a breathing, of keeping a torso stacked on a pelvis, like if that makes you more fragile, if that makes you all of a sudden not do any sets that are counting for anything, that's a problem. And I think that's what we're both trying to stay away from, because neither of us are in pain. If you're in pain, that's maybe a different story. But if you're not in pain, don't all of a sudden just completely rework your program when you go through this stuff. So let's jam on yours, because I want to see. I know you showed me the other day, but it's a little bit different, I think. More compound.
Yeah, definitely more compound. I just have to remember how to actually share this video. Yeah, because it's a big green button that says share. Okay. I've been using technology for years now. All right. So can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So here's where I'm at right now. I'll just skip right to week 2 because this is kind of what I started doing a lot. This is just such a mess to look at one time. But so yeah, similar, like let's say take it day by day. Like I have basically like 4.5 lifting days right now, just coming off like a work capacity cycle. So I'm going to be building my volume up over time. But I did want to take some time to focus on some heavier compound lifts, just working on technique. Like I still do want to compete in powerlifting in the future. And I wanted some time to play around with some of this stuff.
You had a 0.22 meters per second on a dead stop? That's pretty terrible.
Yeah. That for me is like, that was probably a 6 or
0.22? No fucking.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, man. I was pulling those 0.13s and I was feeling like an 8.5 or a 9. My deadlifts can move super slow. And the intent was to move those as fast as possible on these sets. And yeah, I mean, that's kind of what
that's with the push?
Yeah, that's with the push, which ends up picking up like extra reps and stuff. Like I think like when I like kind of do my mad thing, it starts picking up reps, which I think count. It's count for something.
It counts for something. You do your little hip hop at the bottom.
Yeah, it's good. Like, it's picking
Wow,
up the
this
velocity
is
I'm moving ahead.
this is that's a day right there.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool day. Like, and I did this yesterday, and like was that yesterday? Yeah, I did this yesterday, and my legs are like super sore, like for whatever that's worth, you know. And it's not like this is week 2 of the program too. And I was just thinking about some different things. Like, I don't think any of this was perfect, um, but I was just working on counter nutating a little bit more on these front squats, and you know, I was still definitely like coming, I was able to maintain it on the way down. And as soon as I start coming up, like you see that kick back with the hips, you know, we'll see what ends up happening with all of that. But I think that they're kind of counting towards something. So what I do is I have total sets, and I also have sets at or above 8 RP. I'm kind of putting an asterisk next to this stuff because yeah, they were hard, but I don't think, like you said, it really counts towards that quad volume like it normally would if we're, you know, compared to like a hack squat or leg press or something. Um, and then at the end here, I have this like I call it like a front rack terminal hip extension hold. Because one thing, if you look at that video, like we mentioned, like I can't straighten out my knees without completely losing my pelvis, like it going to like the next town behind me, right? Like, so I need to, like, the only way that I can really stand up in that position is I have to have my knees like pretty significantly bent, which kind of matches my table test. If you take me into an overs test, like I have very little hip extension. So, and it kind of seems to match up, like where my knees would be bent on an overs is kind of like where I can stand up on a squat without losing my pelvis. So I have this front rack terminal hip extension thing in there, thinking about what Zach was saying about needing some form of stress. Like if stress got you into the place that you are, and for us that's weight training, you probably need a somewhat significant stress to pull you out of it.
Millions of reps. Like we're talking, each of us probably millions. I'd have to calculate it out, but millions of reps for sure.
Yeah, literally. Like, so, I mean, do we really think we're going to be able to change that by just like laying down in 90-90 and just like hitting some breaths? Like that stuff's super important. You better have that as like a foundation to be able to do this stuff. But I think at some point we need to start doing things that are a little bit more difficult. So what this is, I'm just loading up the bar in a front rack position. I'm getting down to that place where I am able to counter nutate, and then I'm just trying to stand up like while still keeping that counter nutation. And that was freaking hard, man. Like it definitely, like a lot of stuff going on with the hamstrings and glutes, like just feeling some different things. So this is something, again, like I'm going to play with for a little while. I don't think it's ever going to get, like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to flex my lumbar spine, like really. But I think it can get a little bit better than it has been. And I think that's kind of all you need a lot of times. Like, you know, we talked about just like evolutionarily, like how the hell would we have made it here if we needed to, every step that we take needed to be in this perfect archetype of what gait is. Like it's impossible. Like we just never would have survived, right? Like, so we're not that damn fragile. I just think that if you can open up different options, like that's probably a good thing. And that's all I see this as being. So that's kind of the, so I'm counting this stuff as just like nothing. It's just like resets.
Which is honestly, so if we really think about it, if we just let us do squat how we were squatting before, I don't think our squat was probably driving much hypertrophy for us anyways. We were just squatting to squat weight. And so I don't necessarily see these as really taking from a hypertrophy standpoint. From a strength standpoint, that's kind of where we don't know what's going to happen. Maybe opening up these new neural patterns is going to give you more strength, which would potentially give you the ability to do more hypertrophy and potentially load up different muscles and different patterns, which is possible.
I mean, that's the whole concept behind using supplemental lifts. Like that's why powerlifters will front squat at certain times of their training, because they're trying to increase their back squat. I don't see this as any different, really. We're just taking it to another degree. So yeah, I think if you're able to hold this position and this, like if you can still use your legs in this really hard new position, I think when you go back to not giving a fuck, like I think you're going to feel pretty damn good. I don't think you ever lose the ability to extend. Like it's so innate, like you're never going to forget how to do that. Because I think that's a fear a lot of times. Like I know for me, at least when I first started looking at this stuff, it's like, man, like I don't even want to mess with this because like I don't want to ever not be strong. Like I enjoy picking up heavy shit. Like that's part of who I am. Like I think I need that.
There's also this weird thing, like Lucy commented on, and this has nothing necessarily against Lucy, but there's also this very like weird thing in the physical therapy world where they're like, oh, look what I can do. I can take away all the weight and he can't do it. I'm like, and that kind of makes me a little bit weird. And it's like, yeah, like, okay, it's his first time trying a new exercise. Like, yeah.
I mean, that's like giving somebody deconditioned 225 pounds on their back and just say, oh, like it just is, his spine just exploded. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like I get the point. Like,
but if that can't be my thing is like, yeah, so he's strong as fuck. Like him doing a trap bar squat with just the bar is not going to be it's not going to be enough of a stimulus to do anything for him. So we can't treat that as a main lift. And so that maybe we could eventually once you got super good at it, but that kind of that's what kind of irks me. And I might be taking that completely out of context. I probably am. Don't make assumptions with people on the internet. It's probably just a joke. But I think that it does reflect on something that we do have a problem with, and that's in the fragility of some physical therapists, and then the essentially the naive realism of a lot of coaches, and that they can't do any wrongs, and then the answer is always loading someone up. So I think that we, instead of fighting and getting out our pitchforks and yelling at each other and taking away all the weight and then putting on all the weight, maybe we should work together and figure out like how to blend these two things in a way that, still produces a good stimulus for people.
Because it's like anything, man. Like you want to be able to go everywhere, right? Like,
and body composition training, guys, which is what most clients want that are going to pay you money coming from the general population. Body composition training is not dangerous. Like can be super safe. And so now if you're trying to break a world record powerlifting total, or you're trying to snatch, 350 pounds, like that's a different thing, a completely different thing than, trying to get your sets up to 15 sets per muscle group per week and be able to adapt from that. And so that looks like a pretty hideous lower body day that has some novel stimuluses, but also has some stuff that you're good at.
Yeah, it was a really enjoyable day. Like it was a very nice balance of me having to be very cognitive about this new thing that I'm working on, and then also just being able to rip. Like these deadlifts are just deadlifts. Like they're
you're good at hinging. Like you're good at deadlifting. I will
never ever change my deadlift ever again. I don't care what information is presented to me. Like I'm pretty open to change, like in like accepting things, and I'm always looking for things I'm doing wrong. In the case of my deadlift, I can do no wrong. I'm never changing it again. Like because I've been through so much shit. Me and my deadlift are like the worst ex-girlfriend ever. And we finally got back together. We're getting married. It's over. I don't want to hear any other shit from my parents. Like it's been like just such a struggle. But I've had so many problems. Like literally I went in every week in like 2014 for like a year and a half. I just went in every week and just blew my back out deadlifting. Like every week, like it was just going like pop now. Well, okay, I'm done for today. And I'm like, well, I'll try it next week, and like the same shit. Like so, I was able to find a technique that worked well for me, and I'm saying that like because if you found something that really works well for you, then like consider what other people are saying, but don't think you have to throw everything else out because like someone who says bigger words than you is telling you you're not doing it right. But I think like you want to listen to what that person says, but also take your own stuff into account, and that like for me like that, I don't know if what people think of like if I'm, I'm sure I could be doing something different on my deadlift that would make it more optimal in whatever way, but like
a very touchy subject for you.
It's very touchy. Like I get very passionate about it because
it's like the same shit. Off.
Dude, why did you bring that up? Like, why did you have to say
I didn't even bring it up.
It's like, but I have to remind myself too, because like, we all want to like change our clients. We all want to like, we're trying to do what's best for them, but we would be all full of shit if we said that part of it wasn't ego. Like you want to be the person that like fixes stuff because it feels good to you too. Like you want to be the guy that people go to.
Well, so, this is also an ego hit. Like this this
For sure, yeah.
this pause front squat at 235, like that for some people that might seem heavy, but that's an ego hit. And and so like you and I probably we're sensitive flowers, so we can only take so many of those.
So he's like, you gotta give me something, man.
Gotta, like if you took away my like ability to squat, my ability to bench, and my ability to do like the ability to train to accessory movements to failure, I don't know. That'd be pretty weird.
That's a really good point though, because like we forget that stuff when we're working with clients. It's like you might know, like you might be so damn sure that this is the best thing for them, but sprinkle it in. Like you don't change the whole thing, especially if you have someone who really enjoys training. Like you want them to continue to enjoy training. So if you write your own programs, like find ways to still enjoy stuff, like, but accept that there's probably better ways to do certain things. Use this. Yeah, so this is just like the other 2 days. You want to just go through these real quick. This is more of just like really simple. So this is all machine shit, right? So I can just go rip like front squats. I'm going to probably let these go a little bit more. There's no pause.
You got both. You got 6 sets of leg curls. So you're picking up a ton of hamstring volume down there.
Yeah. I was told that not only was my multifidus not big enough on stage, but also my hamstrings. So I need to work on hamstrings this off season. So yeah, a lot of hamstring stuff. And then this is just like a super kind of bro 15 days. So like I think I'm still able to get all the things that I want. So if you really look at it, like in the grand scheme of things, like I'm only spending 45 minutes a week where I'm really messing around with this new stuff. And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think if you do too much of this, if you do anything too much right off the bat, like if you go and read some Joel Jamieson's book and you just start doing every single method in there for aerobic training, like you're going to be destroyed. Like there's just no reason to go there. So I look at this as a just completely different part of training, just a new thing to add in, and you just like work it in slowly. I don't know that you have to change everything, and that to me is like, that's a big change from what I was introduced to in the beginning when I first got into this field, because it was like back then it was like you go to an FMS course and like you're doing everything wrong, which whatever. That's a whole different conversation. But like it just makes you think like, oh shit, like I can't train anymore. Like I need to be doing like all these like half kneeling, like anterior rotation holds and stuff. And like this is my training now. I'm like, that sucks, man. Like I would rather just like bash my face into a wall repeatedly. Like I can tell you I would enjoy that way more than probably what those programs would have told me to do. So I don't think you have to lose any of the things that you really like. When you adopt some stuff.
I would say maybe you have to lose them in the way that you perform them on a continuum. So if you've just been, that's I think what we're really, really big on is if the quality of your movement. So I think it's much easier to maintain a position and express effort when you have more points of contact. And so that's where machines come into play to me, is because if we have someone who is, if they can't maintain these positions or they don't want to rip it on compound barbell lifts, and that's not even necessary, really. You just have to put them in positions, put them in, give them exercises that they can express effort. And to me, I made this, I guess you would call it a vlog. I don't fucking know what I'm doing with my life. But I made a thing because there's this big hubbub about like, there's this new training to failure study, which is between you and I pretty poor. I can't really tell how trained these guys are. They did 6 sets of back squats. So they did 6 sets of back squats to one group went to failure, the other group didn't. And then they were measuring like vastus lateralis hypertrophy. And in 10 weeks, these guys gained like 25 to 40% on their vastus lateralis. I think they went from like 2.5 centimeters to like almost 3 centimeters on cross-sectional area. So that to me is like a big, just in that study alone, like I don't know that my quads have increased 25% ever, especially like in 10 weeks. And so this idea right now, so I get really worried when like fragile concepts kind of just make their way, just permeate through the internet. And so now like everybody's bashing training to failure, But this study was only compound barbell movements. Basically, they had like one accessory lift, and it was like 10 weeks, no deload, just like crushing people. And my guess is they weren't super trained anyways. But I think that these single joint movements in machines, those just don't have, in doing this stuff and tracking velocities, those just don't have the same effect inside the training session and inside the training week, inside the mesocycle, inside the macro cycle. They just don't have the same effect. Whereas if you're constantly taking a deadlift to legit failure on your even one set, that's gonna take a lot. I think even deadlift and squat, I don't even think it's gonna take that much. I think it'll, like on a bench press, what I've seen is it'll take away from that session. Like if you take one set to failure on a bench, it'll take away from that session, but it's not gonna wreck your training week. Whereas I think if you legit take a deadlift to a 10 RPE, a legit 10 RPE, that could potentially crush your training week. And so I would say, how are we counting? How are you going to, if you're going to build, I would challenge people, I'll give you my Excel program, no problem. You can have it. But I would challenge you to kind of go through this stuff and then build your own program. And that's, I think, where the creativity and also just the case study aspect of learning is take this stuff and then make it your own. And so that's what I think we both tried to do without, and if someone else probably gave us a program, they would have taken away some of our teddy bears. And I think we both know that there's just some stuff you probably can't take away from us at this point in our training career. And that, bad or good, you might be able to shift it out of our program over time. And that's kind of what I'm working on right now, is not taking my bench to failure repeatedly, which is really, really, honestly, like, it sounds stupid, but that's really, really hard for the people that I train with. Because we have that VBT, we have the gym aware, and now there's this big thing about who can hit the slowest number. And so
I knew that shit was gonna be a problem. I saw you doing that. I was like, man, someone's gonna die or just or something. Like, but you need to figure that out at some point. You got to figure out what is actually a 10. Like we said on my deadlifts, like, oh, that's a 6 for you. Like, yeah, well, because I know that because I've been there. But I knew that, that was going to get out of control.
I hit 3 reps the other day under 0.2. So normally you would stop people on a bench like at 0.2. Like that's a 9 RPE. Nope. I just fucking went 3 more. It's terrible.
Yeah, you own, I mean, I pretty confidently say that you own the slowest bench press ever. I mean, I've seen straight up 12-second reps out of you. It's like, what is this guy doing?
Like, if I was in a gym, like four people were trying to help me.
Yeah.
Like, no.
Fine. I got it.
But again,
some water.
and so but we joke about it, but that is directly related to strength and training status. So I think, like, if we look, my deadlift is pretty terrible. I don't really care about it. I don't want it. And I just don't want to grind deadlifts. Like, I see a 0.22 deadlift and I'm like, and that, like, you saw the kind of fear in my eyes, like that, like, I don't want to do that because I know how, but you, like, 0.22 deadlift, this is fucking, that's a Sunday. And so that's kind of cool. And so people see that and they might get worried, but for us, if you've been trained a long time, there's some things that you've probably bulletproofed, and that's great. And so don't just throw that out because there's some new thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, your own training experience better than anybody else. So if you're working with a coach, like, make sure you let them know that stuff for sure. And that's
and be honest with yourself, like, legit. I think a lot of people come to us and they think they're more trained than they are, and I don't mean this to be negative. But that's where kind of body composition and then asking people, like, how much they're lifting on certain things, like, we can get a sense of it pretty quickly of where they're at and how much room they have left to grow. And we don't really get to talk about this idea of genetic potential. I don't think we ever really get to talk about it because it doesn't necessarily matter. You just keep training. And so if you're new, accept the fact that you're a novice, and sometimes I see people who don't want to accept that fact, but that's a really cool place to be. where you can
Absolutely.
be like, if you accept it and you can, increase weight linearly, like that's don't try to use these crazy protocols when you don't need them, when you can just essentially just progress load and get better.
Yeah. I mean, you want to just like get as much out of as little as possible at all stages of training, really. I mean, there's no reason. I mean, like if you like my volume is lower than yours right now. Um, and that's like, it's not like I'm looking, oh shit, like Ben's doing more volume than me. Like I need to, like you got there, like you know that you need to be there. I'm getting results out of what I'm doing right now. Why would I change that?
You're
Like I
also
think
coming off a cut too. Like you're cutting off. You're not completely off your season yet, and we've been.
probably not, yeah. But even still, I mean, I've never ran volumes. I mean, these programs are the highest volumes that I've ever run.
Mhm.
So that's more than what I was doing before. Like hypertrophy doesn't happen because you hit a magical number. It happens because you're doing the amount of work that your body's requiring to actually lay down new tissue. It's not about this 30 set study that just came out that says like you need to, like the people that did 30 sets got better results. Like I don't really care. That's cool to see. It's like, hey, well, maybe if you're not getting results at 15 sets, like, well, yeah, maybe we should move you up. Like but you need to be there. Like that doesn't mean you did 15 sets this week and now you need to go to 25. Like you need to show me that you've put in the work in terms of your nutrition, your sleep, your life stressors, everything else, that you're executing the exercises properly, that you're doing all the things that you need to do, and that you're no longer getting any result out of that. Awesome. Let's go ahead and bump it up. But like until that day, why would you want to go there? I mean, even
Or
if you're like
back
us, like
off. Like you might just need to.
possibly,
You could do either one. Like
yeah.
I'm a big fan of, if someone in that situation, I think people are too quick to add volume and
Mm-hmm.
not they're not necessarily going to look at how someone is doing that exercise. Like where are they go? That's where velocity is so like, why are you going to add more sets that they're not going to a good point anyways? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so, and I know like your volume is legit, and I think that that's cool that you've gotten essentially so big without going there, which means that now you can, and if you put if you put either of us in a lot of volume calculators with our training age and stuff, they might pop out with 30 plus sets a week. Now, I've if you've never done 20 plus sets of a week, you don't know, like that is a lot of work,
A lot of work, a lot of time. It's a lot
a
of
lot
work.
of time. And so we've talked about, so my quad volume super high, and then right now, and then backing using different muscle group, essentially never deloading, but just deloading different muscle groups and then coming back, and then you have these specialization blocks, and then you hit certain muscle groups from a purely hypertrophy standpoint. And that's why this is really, if we get down to the nitty gritty of it, I think that's why this is so alluring to us, because this could, the idea that we could legitimately make our quads the limiter in a squat that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah, because that's probably something we've never done before. And what we may find is that like it just makes more sense to do a leg press, or what we might just come back to the same answer. But I'd like to try it out. Like
Yeah, I think loading stuff through the axial skeleton is going to be a wash eventually anyways.
yeah, yeah, I would agree. But we'll see. I mean, it's I can say that things definitely feel different for whatever that's worth. Like there's definitely something different happening. It's a novel stimulus. We might be able to eke something out. I just think like, we talk about training close to failure and all that stuff, and how like sets don't count if they're not at or above an 8 RP. But I think that like it's probably doing, yeah, like
six. I don't
it's
know.
probably doing something. Like whatever you do, like it's like if you're, because a 6 RPE, like if you actually know how to train hard, like it's not like you're asleep. Like, I mean, like you're doing something. So I can't imagine that there's like this magical place where like, because what the hell is a 10 RPE anyway? Like that's very context dependent. Like we talked about, like people go into, like very strong powerlifters will be like messed up for weeks after going to like a real true 1RM. So like, what does it really mean? What's your experience like at that place? Like if you've never really been there, like if you don't really know what your 10 RPE is, like, so I just think that like, we're probably getting, so I look at I look at that stuff as being like, hey, maybe it's just like a little extra fluff, and I'm cool with that. Like that might be something. At the very least, like I'm just working things in a little bit different way. Maybe we're getting some metabolic stress from that. Like maybe we're getting some kind of mechanical tension somewhere. I don't know. I mean, at the very least, I think it's probably going to help with just your movement variance and just your ability to get into different positions
and staying away from injury, which is
that's huge.
Arguably the biggest thing. Like if we think from acute to chronic load status, like that's the thing that's most likely going to screw anybody up. Like we're having a kid, so the other thing is like sickness, and like little kids get sick all the time. So like so that's kind of the two biggest things that you're trying to stay away from is an illness or some kind of injury that just cuts your training volume out. And so if this can prevent that, it's to me, it's just a net win, especially if the more advanced you are, the less and less you're picking up results from those big boy lifts anyways. To me, the game for me now is just how long can I keep training at a high level? And you've gone on stage with some 50-year-old, 55-year-old, even just incredibly jacked humans who are natural. And so I think like if we can keep the wheels on the bus and keep driving as much adaptation as we can, who knows where we can go, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's super exciting to me. I mean, that's where probably where this is going to end up, is that it ends up being, hey, this is going to help us to do things longer. And I'm totally okay with spending 12 weeks, like learning how to counter nutate my sacrum in order to do that. Like I will take that trade-off every single time. Because like, I know, like, just even, I mean, maybe I'm a bitch, I don't know, but when I'm injured, I'm not happy. Like I'm just like, to me, it's not really normal. Like I'm not a strongman athlete. I'm not a CrossFitter or something. Like in some sports, like you have to get injured. Like it's just going to happen. Like you play football, like you're not going to wake up the next day and feel like, oh, I'm ready to go train. Like you're going to feel like shit. Like, but I don't really accept that you need to be like in pain to get hypertrophy. Like that just doesn't make sense to me.
From a body composition standpoint, I think like there's with the repeated bout effect, I'm almost never really sore, and I'm doing 25 sets a week right now on quads. And it's like, if you count, I don't know, the 1-to-1 sets on like biceps and triceps, they're in the 30s. And so from a body composition standpoint, like if you're chasing soreness or you're chasing pain, you're in the wrong place. Like if you want to be a masochist, and both of us are pretty masochistic, I would pick a different sport.
Yeah. I just don't think it's necessary. I still, which is weird. Like I'm always surprised that I still get pretty sore from stuff, but I don't have any like pain, like I don't have any real issues. Like I don't wake up and I'm like, shit, like I got to put on my socks now.
Well, I think our pretty sore is not very sore. Like that.
Probably.
I think our subjective reality is like when I see people and like they can't take a shit, like that has like, or walking upstairs is difficult.
Yeah, that's not an indicator of a good workout. That's probably not what you're going.
That's not happening. Like that hasn't happened to me. I don't know, really long time since I doing CrossFit.
And it shouldn't. I mean, in a lot of ways, like. I mean, you can take the research for what it's worth, but it seems that when that happens, like all of the reserves are just going towards repairing what was damaged. It's not even going towards building new tissue, which makes sense. Like because normally it's going to happen during a very novel stimulus. Like why would your body lay down new tissue for something that like might not ever happen again?
And we're not changing tons. The other thing that we don't do a lot is we're not carnival riding exercises.
Yes. That drives me bonkers.
Because that's what a lot of people do, because they want to win, right? They just chase novelty. And so don't let this new stuff make you do that, where you change all your exercises and then you spend 6 weeks getting okay at that exercise so you can overload it, and then you change it again, and then you're never getting progressive overload. You're just getting fucking stupid neural adaptations to new exercises.
Yeah, that's huge. Like anytime that you're adding new stuff in, it's like that's again like just another case of why you probably just want to sprinkle stuff in, no matter what it is. Like you never revamp everything, unless you're just doing something completely stupid. But I would give everyone credit that's listening to this for as long as they have been. That you probably care about your training. You probably read some stuff, and you're probably doing things pretty well. So yeah, if you're going to implement anything, don't do it all at one time. Like,
And if you're still listening to this, we're probably just preaching the choir. So we should probably be just give you the program if you want it. So you can, you can just email me drhouse@broresearch.com and just say, hey, dude, want the program, and I'll send you the Excel file, and you can have it. And know that the sets are pretty high. How you could knock that off is you could take the sets down per workout, which would be my first choice, or you could just knock out a day or 2 days. And so those are kind of your options of how you could auto-regulate it, or you could go to Zach's course and create your own program. And all of those are viable options. And we appreciate you if you're still listening to this, and we'll keep this show rolling.
cool.
Pura Vida.
Yeah.